Good evening. I'd like to call to order the school committee meeting for November 17th, 2022. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silence. The passing of former teacher Richard Bougerie and former school committee Henry Velati. Thank you. We can start with introduction of members. Chuck.
Charles Dunton, Blackstone.
Aaron Zimmerman, Millville.
Ted Novio, Millville.
Carrie Gaudette, Blackstone.
Dan Keith, Blackstone.
Tara Larkin, Millville. And our student reps.
Ashley Johnson, Blackstone.
Callie Sacco, Blackstone.
And Jason DeFalco, superintendent.
Thank you. And we will start with our student representatives updates.
Okay, so last Thursday we had Pajama Day to celebrate off the long weekend. Our senior class also hosted a Nitro Ball tournament as a fundraiser and also for students and faculty to compete for bragging rights. Fall sports are done other than football. Their last game is on Thanksgiving at BMR at 10 o'clock against Sutton. Both girls varsity and volleyball made it to the second round in playoffs. Next Wednesday is the annual Powder Puff game. This allows the girls of the grade to start pep rally celebrations and gain points for their grade. The high school's guidance department has created a commit board for any college or future plans along with the student names, and they have been extremely busy with seniors applying to colleges.
Student Council had a meeting Monday night on 11/14 to discuss the pep rally themes, games, and spirit days, and tomorrow morning we're having a meeting to finalize those themes and start other plans for pep rallies, so I'm excited to get that on the road and ready to go. All clubs have had numerous meetings and they've began fun activities and planning for the school year. Band and Food for Thought had a cake decorating contest where we would get some cakes from the Food for Thought class, we would decorate them, and then we raffled them off to the school. And that was ran by Miss Sacco's business class. And then on Monday, fall sport captains and other students will be heading to the complex to read to students. And at the high school yesterday and tonight, we're having parent-teacher conferences.
Thank you. Does anyone have questions for the reps?
Football game on Thanksgiving home at 10 a.m.
Yes.
against Sutton, right?
Mm-hmm. Is that the senior game too, I believe, for football?
I believe, I
Right.
think so.
I think I saw that.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Go Chargers.
Yes.
Great game.
Good.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, girls.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have our warrants. Would anyone like to make a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions or opposed? All right, it passes. All are in favor. No, all in favor. Aye. Sorry, new at this. All right, and approval of minutes from October 13th and 27th. So moved.
Second.
Any abstentions or noes? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and we have public forum. Would anyone like to come up with any questions, comments? No matters for, okay. And school committee items. We have the superintendent contract for July 1st through 2022 through June 30th, 2027. Should we wait for Aaron and skip ahead?
You can if you'd like. It's
Yeah.
up to you.
Okay, so let's actually move to the report of the superintendent.
Perfect. Thank you, Ms. Larkin. Good evening, everybody. I'm going to start with my first item, which is an update on some family support services. And I've asked our district social worker, Sarah Rodriguez, to join us tonight. So Sarah, if you want to come on up front and share with the school committee and the community at large just some of the incredible work that's happening in services and supports that are available to our families, particularly during a time of year that we know is really joyous, but also can be challenging in a lot of ways. So Sarah, thanks so much for being here.
No problem, you're welcome. So this is my second year here at BMR SD. So last year I wanted to, obviously this is like the fun part of the year for me. I try to help out families for Thanksgiving and then Christmas. So last year we were able to help, I don't have that number, but I know this year we have helped and are helping a lot of families. So I wanted to write down like the numbers. So Millville, this year we are helping 25 families for Thanksgiving. Millville, Blackstone, we're helping 19 families for Thanksgiving. We had Good Stuff, which is local restaurant that helps us a lot. He's also helping a couple of our families, and Bellingham Palace is helping a few of our families this year. As far as Christmas, that's even a more outstanding number because we have a Holiday Dreams program that is helping 36 of our kids, and then total between Millville, Blackstone, and some of the other donors, we have 126 kids that are going to be helped this year for the holidays. And I also this year was contacted by Channel 5 that we are presenting a family with a Thanksgiving basket on Monday for one of our families here in Blackstone. So those are the things we're doing for Thanksgiving and Christmas. The new program that I was asked to create, excited about, it's called, we're doing a Blackstone over the weekend backpack program, nutrition program, where we're gonna identify kids in need that possibly need food for the weekend, and we're gonna make up backpacks and have the kids go home on Friday with those backpacks and return them on Monday. So I'm having each school identify kids that possibly are in need. I will then reach out to the family with a letter to talk about the program. We're going to allow the family to sign up for the program if they are interested in their child bringing home a backpack. And we're gonna go about it that way. We want the families to want the program as well. We don't want to just call them and say, here's a backpack for your child. We want them to be open to receiving the backpack. So hopeful that we will have, we're starting it small, we're doing it in the winter months, but hopefully we'll grow and we'll make it for the whole year at some point. But right now we're starting it off with the winter months as prices have gone up on gas, electric, and all of those things.
And the backpacks have meals for Saturday and Sunday, Sarah?
Yeah, so the backpacks are gonna be designed to have like 2 breakfast items, 2 lunch items, 2 to 3 drinks, and then we're gonna have 4 snacks about in each backpack. And if it's a sibling group, every child's gonna have their own backpack. So if it is a sibling group of 2 or 3, it's not just one backpack for that whole family. We're gonna do individual backpacks. I have the 18 to 22-year-old group from the high school. They're gonna come and help me make these backpacks up, which will be nice for them to do that weekly with me. And then we're gonna deliver them to the schools for the kids to bring home on Fridays. So we're hoping to get this off the ground starting the first weekend of December, so in like 2 weeks. So I have the flyer, we're starting to advertise it. I wrote an article for the Enlightener that I submitted today, which will go out into the beginning of December newspaper. And the flyer is going out to different like businesses in the area, and we're gonna have donation boxes at all the schools as well. And they're very specific to what we want in the backpack, so we outline that in the flyer.
And we're also partnering with the Blackstone Food Pantry, is that right?
Blackstone Food Pantry is definitely the ones helping, so we're partnering with them. They ordered all of our food so far to get this off the ground in 2 weeks. So big thanks to the Blackstone Millville Pantry.
Awesome.
So those are some of the things I'm doing right now, which is the fun stuff. Any questions?
And what did we have for numbers at the Thanksgiving? It was about 50, we had about 100 that signed up, but I think only about half.
Yeah, about half showed up. Yeah.
And Carrie, thank you. It was fabulous
that was
seeing
a
your
good
family.
night, yes.
Yeah, it was fun. So, food was great.
Yes, it was.
Great. All right. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Sarah? The next item on my agenda is to just give a brief overview on the new updated 37H and 3/4, which is part of the statute, chapter 222, which is all the discipline laws that we have to essentially abide by in all Massachusetts public schools. There was recently a very quick amendment that was pushed through the legislature, frankly, with very little information to school systems. None of us were aware that this was happening until it was voted and passed and showed up in our emails on that Friday. It is being referred, or is referred to, as an act addressing barriers to care for mental health. So that, if you're reading that, that sounds like a lot of things, right? It could be many different things. But most specifically, it is a fairly significant change to school discipline procedures and process. And so I just want to highlight a couple of those for the committee and for the community so they have a sense of what that is. But essentially, there's three main changes that the new legislation addresses. The first is it actually removes language from the prior 37H and 3/4. And just so everyone knows what that is, essentially school discipline is divided up into three sections. There's 37H, which are issues of felony charges. There's 37H and a half, which are drugs and weapons. And then there's 37H and 3/4, which is everything else. So if it's not a felony charge, if it's not drugs and weapons, it falls under the law of 37H and 3/4. And so what the legislator has done is they have removed all the language that actually had the administrator as the decision-making authority on these matters. So that language has been removed, which is concerning in a lot of ways. The second thing they did was they now have mandatory requirements around alternative remedies instead of discipline. So things like restorative justice, mediation, counseling, what the language in the legislation refers to as collective problem solving. So while those things are, I think, important, and I think those things are definitely helpful in a lot of ways, the new law requires that those happen in lieu of discipline if it is an issue of 37H and 3/4. So again, felonies, weapons, drugs are all under 37H and 37H and a half. So this is everything else. And then the last piece that is quite burdensome is the level of documentation that the administrators need to do now in these situations. We've met as a leadership team to address all of these things. But essentially there is a series of kind of check boxes and narratives that our administrators have to now document if there is a student discipline issue that falls under 37H and 3/4, like just vaping, we'll use as a for instance. And all of the steps that have been put in place as interventions have to be documented. Now, there is an option for parents to refuse the intervention. So you might recall a few months we had a presentation from Karen Young about the I Decide program, and it was to help address like substance abuse and vaping. So that's a really good example of this. So prior to this law going into effect, if you had a student who vaped in school, there was a mandatory in-school suspension. There was also a vaping cessation program that the student went through, but there was a suspension that accompanied that. So now the suspension cannot accompany. It's just the intervention. And now with the I Decide intervention, right, which is a very good intervention, if the intervention is refused, then the administrator has an opportunity to suspend or consequence. I can say to you very pointedly, there is not a superintendent in the Commonwealth that knew this was coming. The Superintendent Association did not know. This is the Department of Education's approach to reduce significantly suspensions. and keep kids in school, which I understand. But at the end of the day, if there is an issue that is of a significant nature, yes, we should be intervening, but there needs to be consequences too. There are a few exceptions, but they are not clear and they haven't been tested yet. So I will give you, for instance, a piece of the language in the new law states that if the administrator feels that the behavior that falls under 37H and 3/4 is one that is dangerous or could impede the safety of students or staff in the building, then they can suspend. However, they have to be able to prove that, right? So we've spent quite a bit of time as a leadership team, the principals, assistant principals, Jill, PG, myself, really, Sarah, kind of pouring through the language of this and figuring out, okay, like how do we really approach this and still keep the building safe and orderly and focused on learning, which is what they need to be. And so we are working our way through that. We've had a few instances come up, and this is kind of the good thing about texting and instant messages, because we're all in a thread together and kind of reaching out like, hey, this issue came up. Do you think it falls under here? Do you think it falls under this? What do you think is the right course of action? Here's what I'm thinking. So we can give each other real-time feedback on different scenarios. We have also come up with a documentation form to ensure that we are offering the right interventions and we're documenting everything correctly, so that if we're ever called into question, we've done all the things that we need to do, which we would do anyway, but there is a liability piece that's important, to mention. We have sent those documents to our attorney to look through. She's in the middle of putting together essentially a discipline flow chart that the administrators are going to have to use to help them walk through the different infractions that fall under 37H and 3/4 to see if it's something that we can consequence for or not. Most of them we will not be able to. So that is a law that went into effect. We were notified as superintendents. It was October 21st, and the law went into place November 8th. We were given about 2 weeks. We are doing our best to work through that and making sure, right, we want to find the right balance. We don't want kids out of school. That isn't the right thing. But if there are situations that call for, suspensions, then we need to be able to do that. And so we're working through that process now. And so I just wanted to give an update and see if there were any questions. I know in one of my weekly updates, I had laid it all, but there's a ton of information in there. At this superintendent school committee joint conference, this was a topic that was discussed by quite a few individuals, because it was just, everybody was so surprised by it.
So if I may, so they passed the legislation October 21st and made it effective 2 weeks later, without any real guidance and
No
policies,
guidance, no.
procedures, forms, formats, and
No guidance, no feedback from anybody, nothing. Nope.
so this looks like it's a tremendous effort had to take place to get these things in place. And just going back to the I decide, so you had mentioned with this that the parents can opt out.
Mm-hmm.
How do the parents even know if we just, this has been, what's today? Today's November 5th, 16th or so,
Yeah.
how are the parents,
Yeah, that's a really good
I guess
question.
my
Dan.
question is, if this happened, if a student was being, well, obviously not disciplined anymore, but if the student had a situation, is the collective problem solving taking place before the parent is notified of the issue, or?
So that's a good question in terms of what's the process, because so let's just a quick step before Chapter 222 was all redone, when 37H and 3/4 was invented. Like, that was actually never a thing. I think it was around 2014, 2015 that actually came into play. Prior to that, it wasn't. You had your discipline policies and procedures at the district level, with the exception of drugs, weapons, and felonies, and the districts just managed it, how they needed to. Then 37H and 3/4 came along that created a due process piece where there needed to be a notice of hearing, a notice of investigation, a notice of hearing, and then a notice of whatever the discipline was going to be. So all of those notices had to be put in place. Now we have this, where we really, being able to discipline is going to be very, very difficult on most of these things. We would still need to send out the notice of investigation. There would still need to be a notice of hearing. But at the end of that, most of these will result in an intervention. So, which isn't bad, but you need, my professional opinion, you need both. You need both the consequence and the intervention to make it work.
Right.
To your question, Dan, there would still need to be the notice of investigation, the notice of hearing, and then after the hearing, when whatever decision is rendered, if the parent says, I don't want my child to participate in I Decide or a vaping sensation, then there can be a consequence that's issued.
What about repeat offenders? It's every time it's still just intervention.
Unless it's a matter of safety or.
Right, but vaping, it would be.
Yeah.
So they don't want them to be suspended, but you can spend most of your time in school in intervention.
Right, and I'm
Yeah.
still gonna be missing class.
So with this,
Well, so here's the thing on that. Right.
Okay.
So again, it said none of this has been tested yet.
of
right?
course not.
None of
That's
it's
why
been
they would
tested.
pass that
Right.
legislation without any documentation to prove that it's going to work or not. But
So we
okay,
have-
it makes sense.
The intent of those interventions is that they will be given at a time that does not remove a child from class. So what might that be? After school, maybe lunchtime, maybe recess, which we certainly don't want to take from kids because they need to burn that steam off. But so it's going to be a challenge. Right now, we have a few situations where the students are staying after, from 2 to 4:30. But we have to pay our staff
Stay
to
there
do
too.
that now. Yeah. So it's really, I think it's going to be messy for a bit in terms of trying to figure out what the right course of action is in terms of when to initiate some of these interventions. If a nurse is doing a I Decide or a vaping sensation and there's 2 or 3 students, we may not be able to do it from 2 to 4:30. They might have to do it from noon to 2. So those are going to be tricky. And then you run into the issue of the students, particularly at the high school, that sit or babysit or pick up like their younger siblings and need to be home and they get off the bus. Well, we're not supposed to take them out of class, but they can't stay because they have obligations for their siblings or they have to go to work to help out at home. So I think there's going to be a lot of nuance with this. But my sense is it will be tested. At some point it's inevitable. And if it's not us, it might be Northbridge or Bellingham or someone is going to do something that's going to get, kind of called out and called into question and litigated. In our attorney's opinion on this too, is it's not a matter of if, it's just when and who gets. There's going to be, I'm sure, multiple test cases. So we are already operating underneath this new law. We started and had to as of November 8th. We weren't ready by November 8th, just FYI. It was like the next week, that next Monday, we were ready to start implementing the best that we could, but.
And again, do the parent, is this on the school website, or the parents have any notification of this?
This is the first public discussion.
First public.
Yeah,
So the handbooks, policy,
We're gonna have to
procedures, stuff
update
all need to
all
be
of that.
updated.
yeah. Yeah, that was a big question. Our handbooks will all essentially get an overhaul in terms of, when you look at the consequences for the infractions, what those will actually be eligible for will change significantly.
Wow.
Yeah. So we will keep working through that to the best of our ability and making sure, I did say, I did have a conversation with our chair about this initially when it came out, and I will say publicly, we will not have unsafe schools. And I'm going to leave it at that. We will not have unsafe schools. So we will ensure that our students and our faculty are safe in our buildings. So I don't want our parents concerned or worried about that. But we will make sure that we do everything that we need to ensure the safety of our kids and staff. regardless of whatever language comes along next. Thanks. Do you want me to keep moving? Or
Yeah.
what would you like to- Yeah, just finish my
Let's
report?
continue, yes.
Okay.
Jason's just what to see.
The third item is a request that was brought forward, and at the time it wasn't a request, it was more of information, and it was in the middle school improvement plan. If you recall, when we had presented those at the end of October, the middle school is working diligently to really overhaul quite a few aspects of their programming. Part of that is looking at the enrichment opportunities for our students. And I'm sure you had recalled that we had said at the last meeting that I would wait on the two positions that the middle school was asking until the November meeting, when we had a better handle on all of our salary lines. All of our positions are filled, which is a beautiful thing in the system, and they are reflected in your salary lines tonight. And when we get to the expenditure report, Deirdre's not here this evening, so I will do that report. But when we get to that, you will see that we do have available funds in our salary lines. And again, a lot of that is from teacher turnover, retirements, and bringing in usually newer staff with less experience. And so you will see that we do have resources in our salary lines. And so what the middle school is looking for is they're full-time teachers, but at this point for this year's budget, they'd be half year. We wouldn't look to bring them on board if they are approved this evening till semester 2, which is quarter 3 and 4. And that's because, frankly, you have to post an interview and reference check, and they have to do model lessons. It takes time. So the idea that Mary and I processed was moving forward with the two positions. We have the money in the salary lines for this year's budget, and having them start on quarter 3. So collectively, to give you a sense, for the two positions, if the individuals also opt for benefits, we are looking at somewhere around 70 to 80,000 total, because it's going to be half year at that point when they would start. And then as we go through the FY24 process and we go through the school reconfiguration work and consolidation work, then we can tease out what we actually would need for FY24. And so if you want to see in your the expenditure lines in your packet, you have the expenditure and revenue report. Not to jump ahead on the agenda, but just to give you a sense. Our instructional, and again, our positions are filled with the exception of a para. I believe at this point, is a para or two, Jill? A two? The rest of our positions are filled, and they're reflected here. I cross-checked everything with Monique and Tina. And so if you look at our instructional classroom teacher, we have 144,000 left in that line. And then if you look at the instructional specialists, those are the special education positions, we have 271 left in that line. And so for these two positions collectively, we'd need somewhere between 70 and 80,000 if they took benefits. And that's just because it depends on where they would start on the salary grid. So the funding for this year would not be an issue.
Our chair has arrived, so I will turn the meeting back over to her.
So I think at this point, we're looking for a motion to approve the middle school positions for third and fourth quarter for the STEM teacher and Spanish teacher at the
Motion to
amounts requested. Motion made by Dan. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Erin. Any questions for Jason or discussion points? Did you say you've already selected candidates too? Or
No.
They're not posted.
No, not posted yet. You might be looking at the STEM teacher and wondering a bit about that. We actually, our current STEM teacher actually teaches robotics. So what we would do is we would have we'd keep the robotics course, and then we would add an actual STEM course, which is more focused on technology and math. And we would look to include some of the project lead the way units, like green energies, the biomedical detective unit that we would actually have the STEM teacher do. That would allow the classroom science teacher to focus more on grade level standards. So just a little piece on that, because some of you probably thought, oh, I thought we had a STEM teacher.
And these will be used for some of that schedule reconfiguration.
Yes, exactly.
Any other questions? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you, that's
Thank you.
unanimous.
And that's huge, because now, so to our parents listening at home, this is really an important piece, because now if our students will have a STEM enrichment course, they'll have robotics course, and grades 6, 7, and 8 will all have Spanish, which is pretty amazing. So adding that Spanish teacher will really help, as we move the Spanish teacher onto the 8th grade team. So even if it's just an exposure to that language and the cultural piece for our students, that's a huge win for our kids. So I'm very grateful for that. Thank you. And then the last item under my report is to talk a bit about some thinking around school consolidation. And I want to start the conversation with just a quick review of our blueprint, because it all comes back to this. It all comes back to making sure that we fulfill and adhere to our obligation to our community, which I'm not going to read to folks at home, but is listed here. And I do want to underscore the idea of creating a system where everyone is welcome and belongs. And even through this consolidation project, I will tell you that that really was an anchor in this whole planning process. And you'll hear a little bit more about that, how it's connected as we move through. Transitioning from that, a reminder to our school community that this is one of the goals. We've been talking about this for a few sessions now. Of course, we have a long-range facilities goal, which we'll hear and learn more about at the end of December when we get information back from the Mass School Building Authority about our statement of interest for a new, or being accepted into the pipeline for hopefully a new high school in some grade configuration. But we did also include a second part to this goal, which was to look at a plan that is more immediate and that takes into account our current school facility layout and what a potential reorganization could be to better utilize the space that we have. And so I put this up here as just a reminder to our family and friends that are tuning in at home or that might see this later, that this isn't, while the configuration piece might feel very new to people, it's not a new topic for us. And as a school committee, we've been talking about this for a bit, and we have a formal goal on this as well that was discussed and approved in October. So just to those that might be tuning in for the first time and wondering where, kind of how this came about, it certainly isn't a new topic, which gets us to the why now. If I could just kind of run through these different focus points, I think it would be important to kind of reframe the conversation before we look at and discuss the potential reconfiguration model and talk about next steps, kind of why we're looking at this at this particular period of time. And particularly when we have a statement of interest in for a new high school, some might be wondering, well, this is strange. We're looking at a new school, but we're closing a school. The answer is yes. And while those two topics might sound completely connected, they're sort of not. And I'm gonna kind of walk through that as we talk about these different points tonight. But as the committee knows, we have been working on our capital planning projects for the last couple of years. And that started with DRA, that firm that came in to do the capital study of the district back in 2019. I mean, that's how far back we're going with some of this. And our capital planning committee met for, I think it was about 18 months. And I know many of you put a lot of time in serving on that committee as well. And there were, that was the committee where the statement of interest was really generated for the new high school. But we had a lot of conversations about student enrollment in space. Space was a tremendous gift to us through the pandemic. Frankly, it allowed teachers to have 2 classrooms and bring all the kids back PK through grades 3. Of course, we're on the other side of that, thankfully. And that space is now has a different feel to us, and that we really do have too much of it. And so during the October school committee meetings, we had a couple of conversations about, my concerns around having too much room in the buildings and having empty classrooms. And so right now, we really need to look at this idea of right-sizing the district so that we really can meet the teaching and learning goals that we've set out. And I'm going to talk about how we would meet those goals through particular grade configurations. More logistically, the district was built for over 3,000 students. Right now, our enrollment is running under 1,500. So quick math, you can see that as a district, we are under half of our capacity of where we should be. So we are maintaining a significant amount of space, over 50%, than we actually need. And as far as the process is concerned, our regional agreement, which I know many of you were very instrumental in authoring and helping get into place, we were really intentional about that and put language that was really clear for our community, almost as a safeguard, to say, like, look, if we need to make some changes, we can't just make them. There needs to be a process, there needs to be a public hearing, and all of that needs to happen before January 1st of the year that any changes would take place. What I'm proposing to the committee is that these changes take place for September or August, end of August, of the 23-24 school year, so not this year. That's important because that means that we need to have these conversations and that we need to have a public hearing, should the committee decide that they're comfortable moving forward with that, before January 1st of 2023, which is mind-blowing to think that that is like 6 weeks from now in terms of a timeline, because the new year is creeping up quick. But the other piece that's running parallel to this that is incredibly important is the creation of our FY24 budget. So the reason that that's so critical is developing a budget with 4 school buildings versus developing a budget with 3 school buildings actually is significantly different. As I'm looking at our facilities director in the audience, there's a lot of differences and nuances that have to happen in the budgeting process with that. So we are just starting that process now, and we need to ensure that we are creating the best, most fiscally responsible budget for the towns, for the district, but one that also supports, first and foremost, our teaching and learning goals. So these are some major considerations that we put into the thinking and planning of our proposed model, which we'll look at in a moment. The first is our enrollment is shrinking quicker than our demographic study actually suggested. And I can speak a little bit about the why behind that, and we've talked about this publicly as well at a few different meetings. But if you recall, our 10-year demographic projection, enrollment projection, was that the district would be around 1,430, 1,450 students in about 10 years from now. So we're pretty much there. And if you remember, one of the big pieces we saw as a district was a large number of families actually moving out of Blackstone and Millville. We had lost 171 students, not to school choice. They weren't kids that were here that choiced out to Bellingham or somewhere else, but they either didn't renew their lease or they sold their home. But with that, we were able to re-enroll about 68 students. So we replaced about half of the students that moved out. And that type of ebb and flow was going to happen as far as families coming and going and all of that. But that is an important piece and was a major consideration. If you look at the second bullet point and the sub-bullets underneath that, you will see that there are some pretty significant space issues in at least 3 of our buildings. So currently, Millville Elementary has 360 students, and it was built for 495. So Millville is closest to capacity, and that's because they have Blackstone and Millville students PK to 2, which is great. That model is working incredibly well. It's really good to see all of the teachers and the students teaching and learning and working together. At the JFK AFM complex, which currently houses grades 3, 4, and 5, we have about 355 students. That building was constructed for 795. So you can see a pretty significant difference between what it was built for versus what it's enrolled. And I do want to say, you don't want to take a school building to its maximum capacity. You don't want the building busting at its seams. I mean, it's a good problem to have, don't get me wrong, but when you're looking at numbers like this, you certainly don't want to create a situation where there's no room for expansion should our enrollment increase, which we are certainly hoping it will. Currently, our middle school, which was built for 840 students, has 365 students enrolled in grades 6, 7, 8. And then the high school, where our current enrollment is at 395, was built for 900 students. So again, I just want to note to our friends and family at home, our community members that might be wondering a bit about why are we having this conversation about consolidated buildings and looking for a new school building? Because the consolidation of our current 4-school district to a 3-school district, at least under this proposal, does not address the issue of the high school. And we'll talk a little bit about why in just a minute. The other two last bullets, I think, are probably the most important, at least from my lens as the head of teaching and learning in our system. We sat here last month and talked quite a bit about our 6th and 7th grade performance, and talked a lot about, age and stage of middle school students and needing to do something really different, and seeing the 8th grade students really on the upswing once they are ready to move on to the high school. I mention that because in the reconfigured model, we are looking to do something very different, special, and unique. I will tell you, as a former middle school principal of 10 years, I had 1,100, 1,200 students, and I watched them feed into my one middle school from 8 or 9 elementaries that were all around 300 or 400 kids, and could not for the life of me figure out why we didn't do it the other way around. Why didn't we have smaller middle schools? Because of the age, stage, development of the kids, the amount of attention they need, the kind of the journey and self-discovery they're on. But no one's really ever done that, because that's just not the way it's been done. Schools aren't necessarily nimble and they don't adapt well. So what I appreciate about the model we'll discuss tonight is it actually addresses that. It actually would make our 6th and 7th grade the smallest school that we would have. And that's important because they need the most individualized attention. They're at a really unique stage in their development. And then lastly, our 8th grade students are really involved, many of them already at the high school, in a lot. Not to mention band, music, athletics, drama, but we also have a thriving grade 8 academy in terms of the kids really enjoying their experience there. And again, those students are taking those courses for credit if they go to our high school, which is going to open up coursework on the back end so they can do dual enrollment in early college. So I'm really excited to see that come to fruition. And under this reconfiguration, that actually would open up that opportunity for all of our 8th graders. So here's the proposed consolidation plan, and you will notice that I very intentionally put draft here because that is what it is. It is just a draft at this stage. And there's lots of work and conversation that have to go into our next steps. But under this model, we are looking to move the school district from its current 4 buildings to 3 buildings. We would look to leave Millville Elementary just the way it is. Millville has transitioned every single year for the past 3 years as far as their grade configuration. And if, looking at the enrollment, 340, 350 students, again, it's always kind of ebb and flows. That's actually a really good number for a school that was built for about 490, 500 kids. So it's not at full capacity, which is important, because if we need to add another section of kindergarten, grade 1, grade 2, we have the space to do that. What we would look to do is we would look to change the Hartnett School essentially into 2 schools. Now remember, the Hartnett School was built for 840 kids, and there are currently 46 classroom spaces. 46 classroom spaces in this building. Across the 3 different levels. We did not look at offices or any of that. We didn't look at the music rooms and count those. We counted literal classroom spaces, and there are 46 of them for the 840 students the building was constructed for. So what we would look to do is have a lower school, which would be grades 3, 4, and 5 under one principal, and you would have an upper school, grade 6 and 7, under a principal. That would collectively put the building's enrollment at 574 kids. I should mention these numbers are our current enrollment rolled up a year. So these are true 6th and 7th graders. These are currently our 5th and 6th grade kids. So we looked at our October enrollment data and we literally rolled all the kids up a year. For Millville, we accounted the preschool for 80, which is what we're at now, and the kindergarten for about, we did 100, which was an estimate, the best we could do at this point. But just to give you a sense, these are real numbers of the, current kids rolled over. For the high school, we would then look to move the 8th grade to the high school facility itself and run a grades 8 through 12 building. That would be comprised of about 540 kids. There are tremendous opportunities there. So to our families, our 7th grade families who are tuning in and listening to this, and particularly for students who are really kind of high flyers that can move at an accelerated pace, they will truly have an opportunity to do that. They will have access to the high school courses. And for the students that need a little bit more attention, that need more focus, we've had some really good conversations with the high school administration about a possible grade 8 academy, possibly having some of those teachers looping and keeping the kids from 8th and 9th grade, which if you've looked at any piece of research about 9th grade, if you have a student who is going to go off track for graduation, you will know by grade 9. And so by adding the 8th grade to the high school, that'll give a really good opportunity for 2 critically important years of a lot of supervision, support, guidance, and really having that teaming model for the kids who need it, right? There are some students that may not need that. They can jump right into some of the accelerated courses. They can do that now. They would have access to those. And then, of course, that would leave taking the JFK AFM complex offline. However, the central offices would look to stay there. So not to overcrowd any other buildings at this point, if possible. If not, we will have to pack and move for a 3rd time, which will be fine. We'll do whatever we need to do. But at this point, we would look to stay in the complex if possible. So probably the most important slide in the whole slide deck, which is our next steps. We have to have a lot of conversations about this. So we have scheduled staff meetings for next week, specifically the complex staff, grades 3, 4, and 5. We're going to be meeting with them here. We are going to bring them into the facility. Let's take a tour. There's a lot of folks there that have never been in here. So we want them to see the facility and walk around and get a sense of the space. We're also going to be meeting with the middle school staff because this will impact the 8th grade teachers. Having to move, of course. And so I will be meeting with them. Jill, PG, and I will be meeting with them next week. And then we're going to be setting up parent meetings. And while certainly any parent is welcome, just like any staff is welcome to those conversations, we are going to look to meet with grades 2, 3, and 4 parents because those are the parents that would be moving here. Respectfully, the 5th grade parents are coming. They're coming anyhow because they'd be coming to 6th grade, even if this model is not approved. Those families would be coming to the middle school, and there will be a time for them to come in and see the building and meet with the administration and teachers and such in the spring. But we'll be holding a meeting the week after Thanksgiving here with grades 2, 3, and 4 families. And then we are going to schedule a meeting for our current 7th grade families at the high school. Sometimes just getting in the space will kind of bring some of the angst down. So those conversations are really important. I will share, I had a parent meeting last night. It was about 6 o'clock after one of our families had gotten out of work. And so we were meeting on a couple of different issues. It was an elementary family. And so I wanted to kind of like fit test this and just kind of see, what, because they have children that would be coming here. And it was good. I know it's just one family, but it was nice to hear both the husband and wife say, why wouldn't we do that? Like that actually, to get out of this building, that'd be great. Like the middle school is beautiful. So it was just really nice to hear. I hope people can see the vision of that and see the benefit. And I'm excited to talk about it. And I know the administration is too, with our parents and our staff and our kids. A very important piece of information that we need is to hear back from Mass School Building Authority on the reimbursement of the complex. Remember the windows, roof, boiler, doors. and the 58%, I think it was 58% reimbursement on those projects. We have already reached out to the Associate Commissioner of Finance at the Department of Education, and he has a member of his office that sits on the Mass School Building Authority board. So we have reached out to them already. So we're just waiting to hear back. There's a lot that needs to go into building layout, class assignments, transportation, school times, and under this model, we're not looking to change the school times for grades 3, 4, and 5, or grades 6 and 7. I actually think that that's a strength to this model. It really does keep them separate as two schools. But it also still allows grades 6 and 7 to participate in high school activities as they do now with the shuttle bus, and leaving that system set up so that we don't inadvertently bar the kids from participating in any of the high school stuff that they normally would. So that will not be the case, which is good. We have to review staffing needs, administrative, building, maintenance, food service, health services, and do a review and reassignment of staff. Again, budget development. And my goal is when the school committee selects the date for the public hearing, I will bring all of that information back to the committee so that everything that we learn and share, I will definitely bring back and share with you. And I know that our families and our staff and folks will too. But I will make sure to do my very best to collect information in a very coherent and concise way to be able to report out on that. So let me pause there.
Well, that's a lot of information. And I know you definitely went through this when you gave your summary, but I think it's important to point out if this feels expedited for anyone, or they didn't see it coming, the regional agreement is kind of guiding us on a timeline where we have to, maybe we would have been talking about this in January, we were getting there, but we do have a deadline to meet just to be able to open the opportunity. And with that being said, even if we hold a public hearing and we move that along, if something changes, then nothing changes. It just gives us the option to be able to look at it for next September or August, instead of having our hands tied by missing that deadline. Any questions for Jason on the presentation?
I did send this slide deck to all staff yesterday. I wanted to make sure that they saw this, and I sent a memo, an email to them explaining everything and when the meetings would be. And we did meet with union leadership, administration, so that very respectfully, but by the time it got to this stage, it was important that our faculty didn't see this the first time here. And these are the individuals that are working in.
Are you able to share with us any feedback you've gotten at this point?
So the only ones I've heard directly from at this point has been the administrators, and the union leadership, was very appreciative that we'd be setting up these conversations with the staff right after this essentially goes to the school committee, and was eager to have further conversation about it. But it was fairly just, nobody loves moving. Nobody loves change. I totally respect and understand that. But the feedback at that point was just, well, it sounds like there's a lot to talk about still, was that kind of feedback. From the, at least from our union leaders. But they were very open to the conversation, which was great.
So I was just looking at dates, and being that we need to fit this in before December 31st, or really before Christmas break for school scheduling purposes. Jason, when do you think your last meetings would be? It looks like that's grade 7 parents.
They will be, the parent meetings are going to be the week of November 28th. So
November 28th. And Do you have a timeline for gathering?
My proposed plan was, because right now I'm operating under the guidance of, we have a December 8th school committee meeting.
Yeah,
So my plan was to finish all of the conversations by the end of that week, which I think is December 2nd, is that Friday. Gather all of the information, summarize it, and then send that information forward to the school committee for our December 8th.
so you
meeting.
feel that you'd be able to have that ready for December 8th?
I do.
I was just going to say, if you needed an extra week, that I was going to suggest we move our regular meeting too, but, and still do it all on one night, but,
I will never argue more time.
it's a lot, that's a
but
lot. I think the transportation on its own will be, I mean, people, if we're going to say we're having a public hearing, we have to have those answers.
Yep,
So,
sure.
I don't know. I just think
That
a
would bring
little
us
bit
to
of a
December 15th,
16 or 15?
the 15th. I would not say
Is that
no
a
to the extra
conflict
week.
for anybody?
Would we have to have the public hearing on a separate meeting, or we can do it all in
We
one?
can open our meeting, have the public hearing, and finish
Okay.
our meeting. Just like we do for, it will actually be the same
Oh, it's budget.
Yeah.
as our budget open hearing, so. Definitely just need to make sure that everyone can be here. Is it the 16th or 15th?
Thursday's the 15th.
I can do it.
Is that a conflict for anyone?
I think I have a plan for that night already.
Okay.
I could possibly change them.
Or is there another night?
If we went with the majority, or would the 15th work for you, Erin?
I believe so, yeah.
Would moving it like to the Wednesday be a problem if there is a conflict, or is it Thursday's just better?
Would Wednesday be
Can we
better?
have one day to work this
Check
out?
your calendar.
And I'll do whatever the committee would prefer.
Okay. So we could say tentatively moving it to the 15th.
And not have the 8th. We would potentially move the meeting completely.
Yeah, I'm
Or
not
not.
going to have two.
Right.
We'll do it all in one night.
Perfect.
I'm just feeling like maybe, Dan, I think we have to post our public hearing
Yeah, so,
with
yeah.
more time than a regular meeting, though. So I think it's like 20, I don't know.
You
what-
have to give, so if it's anything, I think public hearings are the same across the line for school committees and municipalities. You're gonna have to post it in a local, in the paper in 2 weeks' notice, so.
2 weeks.
We probably should, even though, because it's on the agenda, we probably should vote to approve a public hearing tonight.
Right.
And then we can leave it, vote to approve a public hearing, date to be determined in,
For this
for the
information.
public hearing, and, you know, the superintendent could, or we can coordinate a date tonight, but vote to approve it, but as long as it's 2
We
weeks,
need 2 weeks to
2
post
weeks of
that.
notice, yeah.
I knew it was longer than the
Yeah.
48 hours.
Whatever
in here.
the school district may have a different notification mechanism than the town, but it generally is the Woonsocket
But the
call.
time
That's what we
is the
use.
same.
Yeah,
We
and,
use-
and use your website, the school district's website.
So having that extra week would be good for posting purposes too, so.
Yeah, no, I think you can post it, you could post, even if it's in 3 weeks from now, you can, as long as you
Yeah.
give 2 weeks notification and a public,
Yeah,
1 or 2 postings and a
so
public
you could let me know
notification.
tomorrow. And I think I'd
Yeah.
like to check with Tammy too, to make sure.
Yeah, it's all the
that-
same. I'm
Okay.
looking at the original agreement, yeah.
I think the
what it's
regional,
saying.
the town of Blackstone, and the town of Millville, they're all the same as far as the public postings. I think it's Mass General Law, to be honest with you.
So I guess the big question tonight is, as a committee, is do we want to vote for the public hearing, to have this information presented? And that is the night we would move forward with a motion to either move in that direction or not. And that gives the public a chance to come out, hear the information, ask questions, because that is different than public forum. And we as a committee would decide what direction we wanted to move in that night. So I think tonight I'd be looking for a motion to,
Let me give it to you.
yeah.
I make a motion to approve a public hearing in accordance with the regional agreement, section on students, section D, grade configurations in each school established by the committee. Students shall attend schools on the recommendation of the superintendent and the vote of the committee. Any proposed change in grade level assignment not including students with disabilities shall include a public hearing before a positive committee vote of at least 2/3 of all committee members. This vote must take place at least by January 1st in order for that change to be implemented on the following school year. That's my motion.
Can I just say second to what he said?
Okay, motion made by Dan and second by Kerry. And the only thing, maybe we should just add the date to be determined before December 31st or January 1st, right? Did you say? you
Yes,
said-
the motion is to post the public, post
okay.
notice of the public hearing. It would be good if we could pick a date.
Tonight?
It-
Okay. Can we
Well,
say
when's our next-
tentatively December 15th?
When's our next meeting? I hate to ask.
No, that's
That
the
one.
next meeting.
That is the next one.
Oh, yeah, okay, so
So we do need to settle a date.
we could, yeah, I can just amend my motion to include the date that we currently have. If it changes, we can change, then the superintendent can post well, why don't we just leave a date to be
So
determined?
let's say date to be determined.
Date to be determined, yeah.
Okay, so motion made by Dan and second by Kerry to move forward and post for a public hearing to discuss this school consolidation plan further and the date to be determined. Any questions or other comments before we vote?
Will this slide deck be going out to families as well soon?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow?
Yeah, I'm going to send it tomorrow with invitations to the two, and again, I'll send it to everybody, and everybody's invited. But it would be really important to have grades 2, 3, and 4 families, and then grade 7 families at the high school. But everybody, of course, is invited.
And that's the meeting where anyone with any concerns, like how will the cafeterias work? How will lockers, cubby space, all that? Those are the meetings where all those questions.
We'll do
should
our
be heard.
best to answer those, and the ones that what we'll do is we'll actually keep, almost like a FAQ, we'll keep a running list, and of the ones that we don't have, we'll generate answers to those, and we'll get them out to everyone.
Perfect.
That way we can try to get everyone the same information. But we'll definitely answer as many of them that we can.
Is there a way we can encourage this information going out with parents that have any questions, or anybody related, or any residents related to this, to ask their questions
So those answers
ahead
can be
of time?
prepared.
Because keep in mind, we have to make this vote, or not, by January 1st. So it would be great to have that we're all on, we have
Are
that
you saying to
information.
have the questions before his informational meetings or before our open hearing?
No, if there's a way that, so we're gonna be.
The survey monkey type
Well-
thing, where you can get feedback.
Sure. Like a Google survey thing that we send out.
Like, yeah, because we're gonna be posting this on the district's site, I would imagine. So any questions, it would be great to have the feedback going into that, so we have
So we
people's
have time to
questions.
get the answer.
Because could be questions that parents have that we didn't think about, or in.
Instead of those questions coming up at
Right,
public
because
hearing.
you hate to
and-
have questions you can't answer, but you have to make a decision that night that's gonna affect the next school year because you're on a timeline. I suppose we can always continue, we always have the option to continue the public hearing for the next night or the next week if we had to, but
Yeah.
that's Christmas, right there,
Yeah.
the New Year's, so it's good to have as much information as possible. And again, to your point, we can approve this, things could change, but it always leaves the option to go that route.
Yes.
And make the plans 6, 8, 9 months ahead of time. So,
Yeah.
and the only other thing I wanted to touch on is where it says, take the JFK AFM complex offline. that's offline for classrooms, but it's still in the district,
Right, yep.
right? So that's just important for people to know from both Blackstone and Millville that it's still, that building is still part of the Blackstone Millville Regional School District, although it's owned by the town. And the office, the administrative offices will still be in there as well as the collaborative that we have as well. So it's not like taking it offline means the town of Blackstone can have it immediately.
Right, we're not in a rush to
No,
turn
like
the
there's
building immediately back to the town.
There's a tremendous
I think-
other process that goes along with that as well.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that, Dan, because I think it's important for residents and for anyone in
Yeah.
Blackstone to also understand that we will partner with the town on whatever that process of returning the school is going to look like and when and how. And it's important to remember, too, that we also have an MSBA, Mass School Building Authority project, hopefully, in the pipeline. And so that's a big piece, and that's going to take some time to go through the feasibility, what that feasibility is going to show, the reimbursement on the complex. I think there's a lot of moving parts to that. So no, I think it's important to mention that. I think we have to partner very carefully and intentionally and collaboratively with the town on that.
Yeah, and because I think some people will think, because this move is part of the blueprint, part of the new plan, and there's a lot of other things in motion right now as well with the MSBA and that the base, the purpose of the plan is for, as I said the other day, is to provide the best quality of education for the students in the district with utilizing the space
That's right.
to its potential.
Slide 5 right here, I think captures, right to your point, Dan, and what you're talking about. And you look, those last two bullets, really thinking differently about how we approach those
Right.
challenges, and then looking up in terms of making the most of the space we have.
So, let's say MSBA says okay, and we go into the feasibility study. Obviously, we're gonna have to put the kids from the high school somewhere else while they build said new high school, right?
Well, so under the design that we had looked at, we would allow them, they'd be able to stay right where they are, because at least under our initial design, which could change and probably will change a million times, we would actually look to build off to the right side of the cafeteria, auditorium, and gym. So that parking lot over.
Yeah.
So that would allow the students to stay. We would build, then move the kids over, and then we would take down the
Oh,
old
okay.
section. Yeah.
'Cause I was just saying, if we kept the complex building, what the number of students currently enrolled, they would fit in that building. But,
And if I could just touch on that too, if the MSBA said yes to move forward to a feasibility study at the end of December, then there's the 270-day period that the towns have to respond with a town meeting.
Yep.
We would be having this conversation next year at this time on how we're going to amend, because then the construction, say if that would have, because then after the feasibility study, then is another set of town meetings to go approve the plans and the funding for construction. So that's a good, potentially 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that'll be 2 years out before we're maybe having this discussion again if we had to move students.
And if we are approved, and again, another piece of kind of the why now part of the conversation, it's 270 days to get the feasibility approved from when the official letter is issued, which I believe is, and Aaron, I know you're in that meeting, it was either March or April, and then the clock starts ticking. We could be in a process, if we decide not to do this now, we could be in a very interesting situation this time next year when we're going to a special town meeting to hopefully approve a feasibility study and having a public hearing on reconfiguring the schools. It's a lot of moving. So we've been very intentional and thoughtful about like the sequence and how we're trying to adhere to the regional agreement, exactly to your point, Aaron, and still get the work done in a way that is kind of small, digestible pieces.
And I think it's important to point out that this needs to be looked at regardless of where we stand after December 21st with MSBA. Something like this needs to happen whether we're getting a new building or not. The new building is also a necessity for other reasons, not because of our enrollment, but because of the state of the building. So though they're going to look like they're, happening alongside of each other, they are happening for very different reasons, so.
Will we get to see cost savings and taking the JFK complex offline?
So those numbers will be available we won't have final numbers until January 12th. And there's a reason for that date. That's the date that we release all of the initial budget numbers for each fiscal year. That first meeting in January is when we release all of those numbers. And honestly, that's a time piece. That's why we start that process now. And then the bulk of the holiday break, well, at the time it was me and Matt running through all of the numbers and putting together all that information. So those are ready for our first January meeting. And this year, I think that's January 12th.
But just keep in mind, Erin, he's not bringing this to us for a cost savings. This is coming
Right.
for.
No, I understand that
I expect we'll see one.
Yep.
That shouldn't be the cause of why we're
Right.
doing this at all. I just wanted to know if
That
we
would be a totally different conversation, and probably not a good one. So I honestly would rather have this conversation than a financial one. So.
Well, I will say that Erin probably just asked one of the first questions that will be asked at the public hearing, though. So, as it was on every regional agreement that we presented and everything else, it's how much is it gonna, how much, yeah. You get the true number on July 1st, 1 year after we've done it.
Yeah.
After you've
Well, are we,
Run the model.
maybe this
Yeah.
is a question for Scott, but are we able to close doors and close off part of the building so that we're not heating the whole thing? And
Absolutely. To heat the building and to have electricity in the building with the kids and teachers in it at the complex, this year we're budgeted for $100,000. We'll probably end up going over that, but because of the rates of everything and all of that. Although if it's a mild winter, maybe we'll be okay. You never know. It's kind of that part's a bit of a crapshoot with the weather, but seeing as though it's 30 degrees in the morning already, I don't know how that's going to play out. But Saturday was 70, so you never know. But yes, there's ways that we could winterize. And maintain.
Cost savings in electricity.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, so all those in favor of the motion as read?
Aye.
Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Great, that's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Great game plan.
Okay.
Very good.
We will pound the pavement now and get to work.
So do we want to move back to school committee items before you go into your business office?
Sure.
Is that okay?
Yeah, that's great.
You did warrants, so.
Yep, okay, just held.
So, we do have in front of us a copy of our newest contract with our superintendent. As we evaluated him meetings ago, we met in executive session to negotiate with him. And I am happy to say that we were able to extend Jason's contract to the fullest extent of 5 years, which is allowed. So through June 30th of 2027, we did offer him a 3% raise, and he also was awarded a $2,500 merit payment, which is allowed in his contract based on his evaluation. So we're very happy to have come to that agreement with him. So we will need a copy signed by all of us tonight, and we will keep it on file. I'll start it with mine. Sure. And was everyone able to review it? We'll just need to make a motion to approve the contract as.
Motion to approve.
Okay, motion made by Dan. Is there a second?
Second.
second by Ted. And I just gave you the information, so all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? And that is unanimous. Thank you.
Just a big thank you to the committee, and I'm humbled and honored to continue to serve the kids in our community, so thank you so much for allowing me to continue
Just
to
sign
work.
where your name is.
Awesome, thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Thank you for making it look easy. The hours and thought that you put into this district is not reflected, unfortunately, in this contract for, financially. But
a
we
blessing.
appreciate you
Thank
very
you.
much. And I think we're also going to table the policy manual section C once again. However, if everyone could just pass their photocopied back to Jason so he doesn't have to print it again, that would be appreciated.
Jason, could you get
We're
us
going to
the
wait till
warrants as
Tammy's
well?
here.
Oh, yeah. And the warrants too, please.
It wasn't Ted, please point out this. This and that.
Just this, yep.
That is not that.
And that was everything on our agenda for school committee. So these, but the policy section C will be back in your folder.
So I want to split it.
At a
I guess,
later
for
date.
December 15th-ish.
I said I want to split it.
All right, so that's all we had for school committee
I
items.
paid attention.
And did you do public forum?
Yes.
Okay. And moving on to the business office report.
Yes.
Sure.
Yes, right. She could not be here
Glad
this
she's not
evening.
waiting for us.
If you look in your packets, you will see an updated expenditure and revenue report. And I can highlight just a few things on here. Some of the big numbers. You'll notice some of these are patterns. They haven't changed. But I just want to bring them back to our attention. If you look at account number, it's 1450. So it's at the kind of the last third of the numbers, 1450. That's district-wide info management. Again, you're seeing a negative of 269,000. That's the tech reimbursement we're waiting for. We're going to see that for a while. It's a federal reimbursement. So I just wanted to bring that back to everybody's attention. Again, just underneath that, the director line, the 2110 line, director, that was our director of learner services. Her salary was not in the right place, so we moved it to the right place, and then we'll move the money. The money is in the budget, of course. It just wasn't put in the correct line. Thank you. Jumping down to if you look toward the bottom, you will see management of buildings, the 92,182. That is actually the asbestos work that was charged there. But in the FY23 budget, the asbestos money wasn't put in that line. It got put somewhere, it got put in a different line, frankly. This is not a capital line, and the asbestos work, if you remember, we budgeted as a capital item. This is a general budget line, not a capital line. So it's one of those, we need to just move the money to it. So just FYI, that is where that came from. The 67,000, those are our SRO details again. And I think those are all of the big ones. And then insurance, we are over on our insurance, just because of the new employees that took benefits. But again, once you drill all that down, you can still see our total at the bottom. About 7.8 remaining. Are there any questions on, I wanted to hit the big ones in case you had any questions.
What line was the asbestos?
That was, if you look at the management of buildings, that is account 4220.
4 from the bottom.
Thank you.
Yes. Thanks, Aaron. It was a 92,182.
Got it. Yeah. Okay.
And again, it should have been charged to a capital line, but it was charged to the, so the money's there.
How are we looking for winter snow removal custodial services for Oh, am I jumping ahead?
No, no,
I'm
it's
sorry.
okay. If Scott, you want to come up? Aaron was asking how we're looking for.
Are the
snow
snow plows on the trucks?
So I just dropped off the sander today to have a bearing changed on the belt. Preventive maintenance.
Okay.
The grease fitting's gone. I'm a little worried about it. I don't want to have the sander full of salt and, sand, and it breaks, and then we have to shovel it all out to bring it to be fixed. So that's being dropped off. Plows we just put on as we need, because if we're just using the truck for sanding, we don't want to drive around with the plow on. It's just too wide and obstructs traffic. I will say, and I discussed this with Jason, that we are in need of another truck eventually.
And do we have the staffing to operate that truck, or are you saying replace a truck?
It would be a backup truck, replace one of our trucks. The dump body on the F-650, which is the big plow truck that the towns use too, the dump body is completely rotten away from years of having salt in it. Keep in mind, the truck's almost 20 years old too. It's only got like 15,000 miles on it, but unfortunately,
Let me
it'll
know when
rot
that goes
away
to auction.
before it dies. So that truck would make a perfect backup truck in the future if we can get a new one in the budget for maybe next year.
Okay. And financially, Jason, we have our snow money?
We do. I think we are. I'm glad you asked that, Aaron.
Is it under custodial, or is it?
Well, we are going to, tomorrow, we have a budget meeting with the principals, and I don't want anyone to be overly worried or concerned, but we are going to ask the principals to slow the spending and to just necessities in terms of things that kids need, because we are not entirely sure what will happen with utilities over the winter, so we just want to be cautious. We are not freezing the spending. I don't want anybody overly, worried about that. But we just really want to make sure that we're paying very close attention, just given the fact that the utilities are what they are. So it's just a caution, it's just a precaution.
Have we seen a spike in, we use mostly gas, right? Natural gas.
Gas and oil. We use oil here.
So the oil prices really have, if anyone's gotten their oil tank filled recently.
I got it
Yeah,
this morning.
This morning, what was your bill? Crazy, over 1,000, right?
It was $4.99 a gallon. So yeah, it was expensive.
Yeah, so we just want to be very careful. We're running a healthy bottom line, but we want to be very cautious.
And I don't think the blow-ups are going in the yard this year.
All right.
If I could, Aaron, to let the Millville representatives know that the Millville Elementary School's plow is ready and will be, that's in good hands for the winter coming.
Very good.
I know the guy who plows it, so it's in good shape.
Any other questions on the expenditure or revenue report? And you have a personnel update to be received and placed on file. We did add, we actually thought we just thought you might like to see, we did hire a few students to be instructional assistants in the after-school program, so we put them on there. We love hiring our own kids to work with our kids, so they are included as well.
Kids should be working.
And that concludes the business office report.
All right, now facilities. I didn't mean to, you could have stayed there.
Well, I wasn't sure how long it was going to go on. Yes, so industrial burner is coming out November 25th, the day after Thanksgiving, to replace the 3 pressure relief valves on the boilers that need to be replaced. I will show up, let them in, and be there if needed. The softball infield mix was delivered. However, they couldn't drive onto the field because it was a large 18-wheeler, and they were afraid they would not get back up the hill. So I had them dump it in the parking lot. They made 3 trips, and I've been using our truck and tractor to get it down onto the field. I started spreading it out, and it's looking good. I will continue to finish that, hopefully by the end of next week. The high jump mats came in, the hurdles came in. We're just waiting, I think, on the starting blocks, I believe.
Yeah, stuff's been coming, it's great.
Yeah. So that arrived today. It's in the new storage containers, all nice and safe. So at the middle school, I got a quote from Automated Logic to replace the VFD drive that controls the circulator pumps. $9,349. However, I recently attended a facilities director convention at the DCU Center, and I spoke to some other contractors there, and I received a quote that was significantly less, like almost $6,000 less. So they came out yesterday and confirmed that it would be compatible with our building automation system. So I got that in writing, so if for whatever reason it's not, we'll hold them to it. But all it does is control the circulator pumps as to when to turn on, when to run at full speed, when to run at half speed. So I'm looking to move forward with that quote. I was talking to Deirdre today briefly about it, and we're gonna follow up. But I see no reason why not to go with it. The playgrounds, JFK, all the wood fiber chips have been delivered and installed. Looks much nicer. As Jason could see from his window, it looked like a huge pile of snow. He wanted to go sledding down it. But, so yeah, we had the custodians install that. Over at the Millville School, we had to move the fence on the preschool playground because of the slide was too close to it. There's a fall height of 6 feet around the ladder. So I had North Smithfield Fence come out and do that, and they completed that work. I believe it was Monday or Tuesday. We still put a pile of wood chips aside so that I knew once the fence was moved, we'd have to add to it. So we just have to dump those over the fence and reinstall the sandbox. And I have some sand left over from when we did the long distance jumps at the tracks. So I'm gonna truck that sand over there so they can have some nice, clean, fresh sand. The pea stone that we took out of the playground, apparently I think the town came and spread it out. I had the companies dump it next to the access road, and somebody came over the weekend and spreaded it. So I'm assuming that was Brian Mullally. So that looks really nice from what I hear. And for the building automation system at Millville, Siemens was the lowest bid. And Maya has agreed that because it's Siemens already exists, that's the cheaper way to go, and they would reimburse us up to $59,000 to have that done. And also on industrial boiler, we did receive a grant for $9,000 for the pressure relief valves to be replaced. Total bill was $11,600. So huge savings there.
Is there a estimated date for Millville?
I reached
That
out
is the
to
heat.
Siemens, and unfortunately, the guy's on vacation this week. So we're hoping to get, they said they could start, they'd have most of the parts in stock. They may have to order some. No more than 6 weeks out on the parts, though. So we do have heat to every area in the building.
I was going to say, how has it been on the cooler mornings?
So I've spoken to the head custodian and made several trips myself. I had the convention on Monday, which was, I think, our coldest day of the year so far. But he's no complaints of heat in the building or anything.
Yeah, and he can do
Yeah.
it manually, right, for now?
Yeah, even the ones in the kitchen and the cafeteria, we
sure
can
it's heat.
manually override them. When Siemens came out, they showed us a procedure to do that. We just have to go up in the ceiling, turn it on and off,
Well,
but
that's good news, so.
yeah,
I don't
definitely.
think we got that.
The whole building has heat,
Okay.
yeah.
So what, the issue was is that the one that's in now doesn't exist anymore to get replacement parts? Is that what I'm understanding?
Correct. Yeah, that building was built in '94, I believe it was commissioned. That company no longer exists. Actually, Siemens bought them out, which makes it even more convenient to have Siemens do the work. So they're familiar with it. Questions? That covers it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And then the only other item under facilities is the surplus item, the milk cooler,
Yes.
simply that it's not needed. Looking for a motion to approve the surplus of a milk cooler at the complex.
So moved.
Okay, motion made by Carrie,
Second.
second by Erin.
Is it broken or just, like, can it be sold or what are we gonna do with it?
I will have to ask.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Leave it out
Jason
on the
will-
road.
Someone will take it. If it's in good condition, I would hope we'd find someone that could use it.
Yeah.
All right, so motion to approve the surplus. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? It's unanimous. And I think that brings us to committee forum. Was there anything else that we missed before I got here?
No.
No.
Straightforward.
Anyone have anything for committee forum today? Were our student reps here today?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So we did some updates. I guess I know I saw the middle school has like the band and chorus December 19th. I'm not sure, are the other schools having like Christmas holiday band concerts or anything? So just, I guess, dates to watch for. And middle school is the 19th, it's a
Winter
Monday.
concerts.
Yeah, the winter concert.
You know what, I'll make sure to get everybody those dates.
When is that?
Yeah.
December
Yeah, I'm
19th?
glad you just
Yeah,
said that,
middle
Tara.
school is the 19th.
I'll make a note of that.
Just email today. You'll have it in your email.
I will send them to everybody. I'll get them, and I'll find out what Maureen's doing tomorrow.
I believe the high school is usually like the night before or the night after, but I don't know.
Okay. By after, so that's a Monday. This one.
It is a Monday,
Mhm.
okay.
But I think fifth grade usually does something too. I don't know if it's now or they
True.
wait till the spring.
No, they usually do have it's 4th and 5th grade this year
Oh, I did.
for
I forgot I saw
band,
that.
so
Yep.
we'll definitely have to get those dates out.
Mhm.
Yes, I'll get those.
All right, if there's nothing else, looking for a motion to adjourn. Actually, so you'll let me know tomorrow about the 15th, and I'll have Jason send that out with his update for the weekly update, if that's okay. Do you think it would be like tomorrow by noon?
Morning.
Okay. So in the weekly update tomorrow, right now our meeting is scheduled for December 8th, but we are looking to change that to December 15th. And we will post that following the rules, but communicate it out as soon as we do make a decision. And I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion made by Dan,
Second.
second by Tara. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed to adjourning? Just kidding. Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.